Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with a severe weather outlook and discussion for November 23rd, 2020, recorded around 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, first of all, the day 2 forecast from the Storm Prediction Center goes to highlight an area of slight risk across portions of Oklahoma, a marginal risk surrounding that across portions of southern Missouri all the way to western Tennessee and Mississippi. The day 3 official forecast has a marginal risk from central and southern Illinois through southwestern Indiana, and then all the way back and through extreme eastern Texas, and then into northwestern Alabama, and parts of central western Kentucky and Tennessee. So the overall forecast for the next several days, kind of the synoptic scale setup here, is that we're going to have lee cyclogenesis occur over the Colorado Rockies, and what basically this means is that the lee side of this, the Rockies here, the Colorado Rockies, this side right over here is going to form an area of low pressure and convergence that is going to develop into a storm system and develop frontal boundaries out across this particular region. So this is by 2 p.m. today. We'll skirt this to 1 a.m. tomorrow, 7 a.m. tomorrow. We have a front here, a weak front that is located in about here, and the warm front is kind of draped across this region right through here. And this is already kind of occluding a little bit, but the occlusion process will occur mostly later in the week. But you can definitely see then we'll run this out 18Z tomorrow, and then finally the storm system starts to take shape here. You've got a fairly decent frontal boundary located in through this region like that, just kind of roughly drawing these boundaries that are located in through here, and then this will start to occlude really by tomorrow in through Wednesday. This should start to now begin occluding. So why the threat for severe weather? Well, we'll go back to the moisture fields in the GFS forecast, and what we're looking at here is the 2-meter dew point and the 10-meter wind field here. So we've got both of these plots on, and you'll notice here that we do have southerly advection already starting to occur across parts of the high plains and across southern Texas and New Mexico right now, and even into the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles. Now, if we kind of continue here, you'll notice that by tomorrow, what starts to happen here is you end up getting a situation in which this area of low pressure has developed. You have a deep warm air advection that is occurring across portions of the high plains and across the southern plains, as well as we start to get this area of low pressure to draw up moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. And you'll notice how that generally continues for the next several days. We still get this area of low pressure here, and you've got a general area of, ascent down here in the warm sector. And we'll talk about the warm sector here in just a moment. Now, one of the biggest problems setting up for tomorrow across Oklahoma is going to be the lack of instability. We can tell that there's not a lot of strong dew point advection here. There's not a lot of strong moisture advection. And that is, again, because this area of low pressure that's sitting out across here is not very strong. This is a very weak area of low pressure at the moment, so it's not affecting a lot of moisture northward. You're not getting a crazy return flow period that is just pumping moisture in for a big time severe weather event. So tomorrow's threat, I think, is going to be relatively lower on the lower end of the scale, but certainly respectable in that regard. Now, we take a forecast skew T sounding for, we'll just say southern Oklahoma. This is by 1 p.m. tomorrow. This is down closer towards Oklahoma City. What you'll start to notice here is a couple of very important things that we have going on. First of all, in the actual charts here, we have a 63 surface temperature over 57 surface dew point temperature. So there's a little bit of a temperature dew point spread as we would expect, but we definitely do have that. Now, there is a capping inversion up here at about 2 to 2.5 kilometers. Right here, you can actually see, if we zoom in, that the red temperature line actually increases with height. So we start out at the surface with a fairly steep positive lapse rate, and then we actually warm the temperature above that parcel, the surrounding air, So what's going to happen is we will likely see some cumulus cloud decks out across here at about 2 to 2.5 kilometers up above the surface here at around roughly about the 750 millibar range. So we're looking at about 8,000 feet or so. We could expect to see those cumulus clouds topping out. Now, the one thing that we have going for tomorrow across Oklahoma, we have a fairly decent moisture profile. You do not see crazy, dew point deficits way up here where it just kind of follows a very steep drop off down into the -20 range out here. It's not like that. You actually have a fairly decent moisture profile through the entire atmosphere. And we also have a lot of vertical wind shear. If we look at the hodograph values for tomorrow, you can see that the hodograph here is fairly curved in the first 2 kilometers. So this is suggesting that we would definitely have a curved hodograph for storms to take advantage of some storm relative helicity in that region, which is running above 200. Now, if we go and look even further here, this is actually going out to Wednesday, really late Tuesday into Wednesday morning. This is by This is actually by 7 p.m. Tuesday evening, so 7 p.m. tomorrow. We have a stronger moisture advection, and the reason for that is because what we have going on right now is this area of low pressure is actually becoming a little bit more dominant, and thus it's able to draw up a little bit more moisture into parts of southern Oklahoma. So your best severe weather opportunity is really going to come in this general area in southern and central Oklahoma, right along the frontal boundary here. And that's very important. And now if we take a skew-T sounding here in that moist sector, what you'll start to notice is that we actually have a little bit better dynamics for a storm to work with. First of all, we don't have any capping inversion. We have a fairly weak to moderately positive lapse rate all the way up here to where it reaches just about the equilibrium level. But our instability values are not all that good. You can see the wet bulb temperature, which is located this solid blue line right here. This is the wet bulb temperature. So these downdrafts that will be occurring are going to definitely shorten the available instability in the atmosphere, and we already don't have a lot. So these storms are going to be more, I think, elevated storms. This doesn't necessarily pose a real big day for surface-based thunderstorms. We don't see ridiculous Cape values right here that are 1,200, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 Cape. This is pointing towards the fact that we could get some either low top supercells, or we could get just a line of storms to develop. And I think what we're going to see is a line of thunderstorms to develop given this profile. And also, you can see here in the column in the hodograph, we have a very curved hodograph, but notice the really elongated values here. This is really kind of suggesting that we're probably going to see the potential for a line of storms to develop rather than individual supercells for tomorrow. And this is very important because what's going to end up happening is any individual supercells that try to develop in this environment, I think, are quickly going to be hampered with the available instability. And it doesn't look like a really good tornado day for tomorrow. Now, if we move this even further, this is by 6 1 a.m. Wednesday morning. Your strongest moisture advection now approaching into far southeastern Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas at this moment. So look at a representative sounding out here. Once again, it's much of the same scenario that you're going to see. In fact, really, you don't really see a lot of great dynamics in the atmosphere. So you have a curved hodograph, but it does not look like you're going to see a fairly significant day for tornadoes, across Oklahoma and whatnot. Now, if we converse this out here to this is the Euro high res, we can look here at the moisture field. And again, it's much of the same story. This moisture field increases. It's a little bit higher moisture content across southern Oklahoma, much of these same scenarios. And if we look here at the NAM, this is the NAM 3 kilometers, so it's a little bit higher resolution. Now you can see here that this takes a little bit more time for the moisture to be returned into southern Oklahoma. If we take a representative sounding on the edge between that, you can definitely see here a little bit better dynamics. We definitely have more instability in the atmosphere to work with, although is still likely going to be um, elevated storms. You can actually see a capping inversion in through here. This moisture definitely follows that temperature line, but then quickly drops off here, kind of an elevated mixed layer scenario. So this definitely increases the mid-level CAPE, and that's why mid-level CAPE values are approaching almost 800, because there's a pretty considerable drying out in this part right here, and this would definitely allow for some higher CAPE values to exist in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. Fairly good curved hodograph, and if we look even further south here, this is down into eastern Texas, we see that the dynamics are still kind of the same. And we do have a little bit more in the way of instability, but we do have this capping inversion that is working on here approaching almost 200. So it's going to be a little bit hard to squeeze out tornadoes tomorrow, I think, in this sort of environment. Now, if we look even at the HER model, this is the high resolution rapid refresh. And again, much of the similar solution exists here. If we look here, this is 18Z tomorrow. Again, we've got a pocket of moisture streaming northward. But you can see here the synoptic scale setup is just not really that favorable. Definitely could see some damaging winds, but a fairly sharp, temperature inversion at that point. Now, if we look here, this is going out with time. We'll move out here to later in the evening. This is the end of the forecast period, really, at hour 36. You'll notice that moisture does increase, and we get a little bit of backing with the wind there. And we can also notice that there is a little bit more in the way of instability to work with in the low levels, but there is still a little bit of a capping inversion. So this is likely going to put the hamper on much here in the atmosphere. We're probably not going to see a very big tornado day. Hodographs, though, definitely support tornadoes across this area. Definitely would go to support that, but we are probably not going to see a big tornado day tomorrow. Now, looking downstream across the warm front, this continues to move kind of off towards the east here with time. And if we actually go back and we look here at the surface dew points here on the NAM, we can see that what starts to happen here is, again, we've got our cold front that's moving across here right now. This is our cold front, and then you've also got this warm front that's kind of lifting northward like this. This is our warm front. Now you can see here that behind this warm front, kind of right near it, you're going to see definitely a curved, very curved hodograph. Very sharp curved hodograph here. This definitely would go to support the potential for tornadoes in this type of environment. Definitely, but the moisture and also the lapse rate combined with the instability is going to be too low in this type of environment. Now, if we squeak out here to a couple of more hours, this is by Wednesday, approaching, really starting to approach here by late Wednesday afternoon. We can see that across southern Illinois, we have, this seems like a convectively contaminated sounding. So let's go a little bit further east here. Yeah, it still seems a little bit convectively contaminated. So let's drop down across southwestern. There we go. There's a non-contaminated sounding representative to some of that environment. Definitely have a very sharp, you can definitely see there is definitely that sharp temperature increase. So there will be a cap in the atmosphere, but it shouldn't be too much. You could definitely get it with some warming. But the only problem is, are we going to get warming? And that's the big question here. So we may not get enough warming, but if we do, we could definitely see some an increase in these temperatures here, to about 61, 62 Fahrenheit. We could definitely see some storms. The instability is very lackluster, but we have a very sharp, gradient here between the wind profile. So definitely could see some tornadoes across southern Illinois. If we look back further in towards the warm sector, we could definitely see what starts to happen is you definitely get an increase in your, in the available instability. These photographs are very enlarged across here, very supercellular looking, and the profile is one that definitely would support supercells, especially with that sort of environment. So this definitely could be something that we're going to have to watch down here in the warm sector. May even see a slight risk if we can get enough temperature warming and instability to occur. All right, so with that being said, hope you have a great rest of your afternoon, evening. Hope you enjoyed this little analysis here. And going forward with time, this is what we're likely going to be doing. And I don't know if you guys saw my post earlier here on YouTube in the community tab. If not, go check it. But programming alert, right now, we're kind of putting the hurricane outlook and discussions aside to focus on other things at the moment. The hurricane season is winding down. We're just about done with everything at this point. Really only one area out there in the tropics, and that should not be much of a concern over the next 5 days. So, really, from now until November 30th, we're not going to really be talking about the tropics on the Atlantic side. We might talk a little bit here and there about tropics, the globally tropical weather. But other than that, then starting from November 30th and going all the way to May 31st of 2021 will be the off-season hurricane outlook and discussions. And then from there, you'll discuss the off-season conditions, etc., and get more in depth into the lower 48 weather, etc., etc. So, hope you all have a good rest of your afternoon and evening. And I hope you do enjoy this new format that has kind of been to the channel. Definitely going to try to upload a lot more over the next several weeks and months going forward with time. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Again, this is Mike O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again more tomorrow.